Hi, everyone. Welcome to KT Connects. As you may know, it's a monthly knowledge translation skills and best practices webinar series co-hosted by Arthritis Research Canada and Michael Smith Health Research BC. My name is Kevin Sauvé. I'm a program manager with Health Research BC's Science Initiative, and I'm the host of today's webinar. Cody is unfortunately not able to join us today. And this, so you all know, is the last in our series on open science. So thank you to everyone that's joined us throughout the last 6 and now 7 webinars on open science. And today will be our closing one. A few things to note before we get started. The webinar is being recorded and it will be made available on Health Research BC's website. If you use social media, please post content about today's webinar and anything about this series using the hashtag KTConnects. A Q&A will take place in the last 15 minutes of the webinar. Use the Q&A dialog box, please, to ask questions for the speaker at any time, and I'll present those questions to Dr. Freeman at the end of the webinar. The chat box is enabled and it's intended for you to share your thoughts with your fellow participants and to request support from us, the organizers. But please don't post questions for the speaker in the chat box as they may not be noticed and I might not be able to ask them then during the Q&A. So just make sure you know the difference between those two. If you have any questions, please ask us in the chat box. And of course, to be safe, don't share any personal information in the chat box or the Q&A dialog box, including email addresses. But before we begin, I want to acknowledge the people who are the stewards of the lands where many of us are located today. Health Research BC and Arthritis Research Canada are situated on the traditional, ancestral, unceded, and stolen territories of the Coast Salish peoples. This includes the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, known colonially as Vancouver, Canada. Personally, I'm a white settler of French, Scottish, and German heritage. I was born and raised in Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory, otherwise known as Southern Ontario, near Kitchener, Waterloo. From coast to coast to coast, I want to acknowledge all the Inuit, Métis, First Nations, and other Indigenous peoples that have called this land home for many generations. Recently, Health Research BC had a staff retreat, and we were very fortunate to have Harley Eagle, an Indigenous cultural safety consultant, speak to us about reconciliation and its purpose and its value, and how we as settlers can approach it earnestly and in good faith. I learned a lot from Harley, particularly how this work should be fueled by optimism, including that the objective of land acknowledgements themselves is not about guilt or shame, but to motivate and encourage others to join a hopeful path of truth with the intent toward genuine reconciliation. In particular, I appreciated this quote shared by Harley, authored by Leela Watson, Murray Aboriginal artist, activist, and academic. If you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. And as such, our aim with KT Connects is to serve as a catalyst for collaborative and collective learning, fostering meaningful discussions, engagement, and partnerships along the way, and to do so in a good way, acknowledging and appreciating the people and worldviews that have inspired knowledge generation and use for millennia. So as we meet today, let's consider how we can actively contribute to the vital process of decolonization in our respective fields and our working and daily lives, and honor ways of knowing that may be unfamiliar to us, but hold much potential for collective liberation for all of us as citizens of a shared and precious earth that we all call home. Please feel free to provide your own personal land acknowledgement and commitments to reconciliation in the chat box. Now I have the pleasure of introducing today's esteemed speaker, Dr. Shannon Freeman, who is delivering the 7th and final webinar in our Open Science series. We've certainly saved the best for last. Dr. Shannon Freeman is an associate professor in the School of Nursing at the University of Northern British Columbia. She is also a Health Research BC 2020 Partner Scholar, and her award is co-funded by AgeWell. Dr. Freeman has expertise in the health and social care needs of older adults in rural and northern communities, including those living in the community and those living in long-term care. She led the way in developing UNBC's Center for Technology Adoption for Aging in the North and AgeWell National Innovation Hub, for which she is now director. The center focuses on improving implementing, and evaluating technology to support older adults in rural and northern communities. Shannon, over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that lovely, lovely introduction. I'm just going to share my slides here, and I hope that you're able to see them. Here we go. There we go. Can you see them okay?
We can. Thank you.
Fabulous. So it is my great pleasure to come to speak to you all today. And first, I want to say thank you for joining. I know it's a Friday, it's in December. Everybody is busy, so thank you for choosing to spend the next hour with us. I'm going to share some examples today about how our partnered approach that we take in the North to implementation is really having positive effects in our community to enhance equity and outcomes and supporting people to live well. So I'm going to provide a bit of an introduction to our context in Northern BC, and then I'm going to share about what we're doing at the Centre for Technology Adoption for Aging in the North, or what we call CTAN. And then I'm going to share 2 case study examples of how age tech innovations are being implemented in a Northern BC context and the findings from our evaluation. As this is the KT Connects webinar, I'm going to highlight those real-world impacts that our work is having and share and showcase some of our different approaches we're using to share that information out differently depending on the audience. And I'd like to note that that the work that we do and I discuss today is supported by quite a broad range of funders. And so I'm very proud to be supported by Michael Smith Health Research BC as their scholar, 2020 to 2025. And just to be really clear, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for their really wonderful support, which has enabled me the necessary time to be able to invest in research and a partnered approach to research here in the North. Work today I'll showcase has also been funded by UNBC, PHSA, the Northern Health Authority, Vancouver Foundation, Rio Tinto, and AgeWell, of course, which is Canada's National Aging and Technology Network. You can see on the first few slides, we'll be using Slido for a couple of interactive engagements throughout the presentation. So I welcome you to take a moment in the next couple slides to use that QR code or go to slido.com on the internet to connect so you can participate in some of our pieces today. So as Kevin gave a really great land acknowledgement, I too want to acknowledge that the majority of work that I do, and indeed the office that I am connecting to you today, is on the Prince George campus of UNBC, and we're situated on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Lheidli T'enneh First Nation. And I look at that beautiful photo on the slide today, and then look out my window to see the rain and the gray. And I'm reminded through the rain comes the beauty of nature. And so it always motivates me to take a deep breath and a moment to reflect on, the land where we are and the people that we serve. And when we're doing research, remember who is the people who are supposed to benefit from that work and how can they be engaged at all stages to really direct the work that we're doing and to authentically partner with us to make sure that the outcomes are relevant to address the needs, gaps, and opportunities for them. So a bit about me. I began, like Kevin, I too am from Southern Ontario. I'm from a very small village of Ayr, Ontario. And when I was growing up, it was so small. I always say, we're so rural, we don't have a traffic light. That was how I defined it. And indeed, they still don't have a traffic light in my hometown. But that's where my true connection to community, my value of communication and engaged partnership and research really comes from. I'm a lifelong learner and I'm always happy to work with others to grow and expand knowledge and learnings, including my own. You see there a picture of my grandmother. She was very instrumental in my life and I lived with her during some of my teenage years. And so my relationship with my grandma really fueled my passion to gain the knowledge to be able to care for her and support her when she would need it in later life, but also to really unravel what can we do to support people to age well in their later years. So all of my research that I do has to do with improving health and well-being of older adults in some way, shape, or form. And at the heart of what I do is a partnered team approach. And this enables me to be engaged in quite a broad range of research projects. And indeed, as a social gerontologist in Northern BC, being responsive to community, that's why my portfolio is so large. But generally, my research fits in three major areas: accessibility to health services, promoting health and well-being in later life, and looking at healthy aging and advanced longevity. You can see in the black bullet some examples of projects that I do, but the key piece here is that all research is done in partnership with persons with lived experience, including older adults and their care partners, as well as other academics, health systems leaders, industry partners, community organizations, among others. So today's presentation is on open science and really making that connection between open science and, community engaged partnered research here in the North. So I just wanted to take a moment to gauge from the audience about your level of knowledge and awareness of open science. So have you heard of open science before? And indeed, I see that people are already clicking in there. Oh, we have lots of people who are familiar. But not really sure what it means. Some people are more familiar, and other people, this is a new topic to you. So that's great to see as we're moving there. We've got a mixed audience, and that's okay because when I started to prepare for this presentation myself. Talking about open science, I think we call it many different things. And so indeed, you may be doing open science, but not really knowing that that's what it's called. So the next question is, for those of you who are aware of open science, my question for you is, how often do you integrate that into your approach? Is this something that you're always doing? Sometimes, usually, never, rarely? And I'm going to give you a bit of a minute to answer that one. Answer that one there. So we're a bit all over the place, but the majority of you are kind of in the middle, that it's something that you often integrate, sometimes or rarely. So that's really good. That's really good to know, because it can be challenging to do, and it can take time to learn how to do it well. But I think once the more you integrate it into your approach, the easier it will become, to the point where it can become, a normalized way of research community, research partnerships. So I wanted to just kind of take a couple quick minutes to set the stage here about open science, especially for those of you who are unfamiliar with what open science is. And hopefully this will validate those expert open science users' understanding. I found this diagram really helpful. It may be familiar to many of you. It's really helpful to understand that open science is a life cycle. So it's a process, and it includes 4 sequential and cyclical broad categories of open science. It's also a really helpful image because it provides some practical examples on the outside of practices for each category. So you have the categories in the middle, and then those examples on the outside ring. So open science is not necessarily the way that science has been historically conducted. We talk about tradition, culture, and incentives, and have created an environment where, scientific outputs and inputs and processes can sometimes be closed, so they're accessible through a paywall, or only available to the researchers or collaborators. And so traditionally, when a lot of people think about research, that's what they think about it. But open science is that movement to make scientific processes and practices, including research methodology and outputs, more open and transparent. However, when I think about open science, I think, many of us do it. We definitely engage in components of open science, but we can call it different things. Open science can happen at all stages of the research life cycle. And just like in the application of an integrated knowledge translation approach, engaging individuals with lived experience at all stages and making sure that the output of the process are also available and that your actions are transparent are critical. So scientists or researchers start with the creation of the research question. We talk about ideation, that's the one. Often in my research area, we call this co-creation, co-design, and in taking a community engaged or a user-centered approach to identifying the research directions. During the stages of data collection and analysis, again, from an integrated knowledge translation approach, persons with lived experience, our health systems leaders, and knowledge users can play a really valuable role to ensure validity of data collection and analysis. The third stage here, what we talk about publication of results, and the fourth and final stage is about communicating with knowledge users so they can utilize the results to make informed decision. I think when we talk about knowledge mobilization, we talk about publication, we talk about research outputs that are accessible to anyone who is interested to use it. So again, breaking down those barriers to being able to access publications, and also thinking about how knowledge is communicated and shared in a variety of ways so that it can be exchanged and understood and then used by the audience that it is designed for. So when you think of open science, what words come to mind? When we think about breaking down those barriers, making science, making our research open and transparent, how would you describe that? What are some things you think about when you think about open science? And again, for the Slido, you can type in a few different words that come to mind for you. So we see lots of great words coming up here. Accessible, accessibility, barrier-free, transparency, accountability, accessible. Some people are noting collaborative. Think user-centered, inclusive, aligned to your user needs or your patient needs or community needs. Yep, we talk about sharing. We talk about return on public funding. Yeah, definitely that accountability piece. When we think about where is the funding coming from to support our roles, our positions, our research activities, I see trust there, and open science helps build some of that trust. Free information, free knowledge. Yes, lots of great ideas. So I think when you think about open science, these are the words that are coming to mind for the audience, and I couldn't agree more, especially with it being collaborative, it being accessible, and it being transparent. Making the most of data, making the most, getting the most value out of all of the time and effort and resources that are input, making sure those outputs are reaching various audiences in a way that can be beneficial and useful for them. Absolutely. So when we think about integrating an open science approach into research, especially if this is new to you, here are some fabulous resources that can really help you integrate that open science approach into your own work. Lots of organizations like Health Canada, Statistics Canada, Public Health Agency of Canada, and many others have open science action plans. There's lots of helpful suggestions in these reports. They can be useful, and you can take what can be applied to your research in your field. Additionally, the Center for Open Science is another great resource, and that's the website www.cos.io. And they were a nonprofit founded in 2013, and really their website provides lots of valuable information on open science, including the Open Science Framework. And the Open Science Framework, so that's osf.io, was developed as a tool to promote open, centralized workflows by enabling capture of different aspects and products of the research lifecycle. So these resources actually help you with the how. So many of us will all agree open science is fabulous. We should all be doing it. And then sometimes you can get a block at, okay, I want to do it, but how can I do it and how can I do it well? These are two wonderful resources to get started. The framework, the Open Science Framework, is endorsed by a range of university libraries. And as noted by one of our university librarians here at UNBC, she noted to me, the Open Science Framework is super reputable and a great platform. Most research institutions in Canada support its use, even if they don't have the institutional paid subscription. So for today, I'm here to share with you how the work we do here at CTAN is guided by an open science approach and how that's helping make a difference in the lives of older adults in Northern BC. So I'm going to give you a bit of a brief overview of our context, and then we'll focus more deeply on CTAN and highlight the impact of some of our work. And I'm going to highlight some of our work focused on hydroponic gardening. And then I'm going to share a bit about how embedding technology in a facility to support persons with dementia to live well in rural communities. So a bit about context here in Northern BC. While Northern BC may have the smallest proportion of older persons compared with the other health authorities and regions in BC, it will face significant implications as a result of population aging trends. And it's really important to consider what this means for our healthcare system. And we also need to consider the geographic context, because Northern BC, while it has a smaller population, they're dispersed over a wide geographic area. And as you can see here, by 2035, the number of older adults aged 75 plus is expected to exceed the proportion of older adults aged 65 to 74. These projections are important because they help predict the demands for the health system over time. And without changes to how care is provided, the pressures on our long-term care sector and hospital acute care sector will be enormous and likely unsustainable. And we're already experiencing many of the challenges, and they're only expected to increase moving forward. However, there's a lot of opportunity here to offset some of this pressure by thinking about innovative solutions and considering how we can do things differently. Technologies, especially those that support older persons to age in the community, are recognized by our health systems partner to play a really vital role to help reduce some of these demands. So this is the work we do at CTAN, and so all of our work grows out of our regional needs and discussions with our collaborators at Northern Health, as well as community leaders, government, volunteers, and persons with lived experience in our northern communities. So this is an example based on, this slide is an example based on the modeling work that we've done that was part of the bed modeling that was done here in the north. And it shows, what if we keep the status quo? What if we don't do anything? What if we keep doing everything the way we're doing it? So keeping the status quo, as you can look at this slide, is really scary. And it heightens the need for opportunities for age tech to support and complement the existing health system services and supports to meet the demand. It raises that need to think more creatively together in partnership about the role that research and technology innovation can have to focus on parts of the system, and thinking about how research can focus on home care, adult day programs, assisted living, supporting people to live well, age in place longer. So there's lots of opportunities there. So when we think about technology and aging, there's a lot of misconceptions. And we often hear, oh, older adults don't like technology. Older adults don't want to use technology. And indeed, 2020 AgeWell National Survey found that the majority of older Canadians feel comfortable using technology and confident using technology. And 3 in 4 believe technology can help them. But here's the gap. Only 1 in 5 older adults reported that they use technology to support their health and well-being. And so there's lots of reasons for that gap, but one of the biggest ones that I just want to emphasize here is when we think about accessibility to infrastructure. And so when we think here about broadband access and cellular service access, we think, you know, the majority of Canadians can access good Wi-Fi, good cell service, but that picture looks different in rural communities. Over the pandemic, we've seen a shift to using digital technologies, but we need to be mindful that there's substantial gaps between urban and rural communities, especially here in the north. So if we look at access here in the north, this is a picture of the 2/3 of the province. And if you look at the purple, you can see in the middle, this shows the access to Wi-Fi, brought to broadband at the acceptable minimum level, and access to cellular service. And you can see that there's substantial gaps in that service across the north. So looking forward, what can we do? Our emerging strategy in the north focuses on taking a partnered approach to really addressing how we can embed age tech throughout the care system to support people to live well. And indeed, our Northern Health Authority partners have recognized that technology is a key enabler of the care ecosystem. So at the policy level, those conversations have occurred to recognize the importance of this. So all of the work that we've done at CTAM was originally designed in partnership with Northern Health to align with their aging in place care ecosystem. So when CTAM was launched, there was a summit at UNBC where the Northern Health Authority came to UNBC, and you can see a picture there of the workshops where we set those priorities for what our research, our age tech and our technology research priorities would be here in the north. And I think for those of you from other parts of the province or even other areas in Canada or beyond, these top priorities identified by our Northern Health Authority partners ring true across a wide range of areas, from safety in the home, remote home monitoring, navigating healthcare system and healthcare system supports. So that's where we aim to fill this gap between technology use and innovation. And so we think about it like the Grand Canyon, where there's some fragmented accessibility. Sometimes age tech makes it, but often it doesn't. And if it does, it's very resource intensive. So the work we're doing aims to really bridge that gap, to be that connector between older adults, their care partners, and our health system that supports them, and connecting them to all of these different technology solutions, either that are being created or all the way across to being commercially available to support them. So here at CTAN, we take a partnered approach with the Northern Health Authority, UNBC, and AgeWell to really make sure that these supports are reaching our individuals who are aging here in Northern BC. We co-develop projects. We use established partnerships with different companies to meet the needs of individuals here in the north. In our approach, we first try to understand the challenges, needs, and operations of individuals across our communities. Then we work together to co-develop projects in partnership with different individuals involved from a team-based approach. All of the project work that we do engages end users right from the start. It engages persons with lived experience, older adults, care partners, engages our health systems partners, our industry partners, our community leaders, right from the point of identifying the need. We work together through the project with transparency and authenticity to ensure that the work we're doing aligns and continues to align with their needs. So not just at the start of the research process, but throughout the whole process, that we keep that alignment together. So our activities here in the north, we do a lot with education, raising awareness. We have a demonstration and testing facility here at UNBC. So members of the community come in, can try, can see, can test the different technologies. And then we also facilitate testing, real world testing and evaluation of those technologies to see what needs to be adjusted, what needs to be adapted for them to be successfully implemented, and then that implementation sustained in our northern communities to really make that meaningful difference. And again, it's done through partnership and collaboration. We co-develop these projects across a wide range of areas. So here's some of the industry partners that we work with. And you can see here that we work across a large range of areas. So from technologies to support autonomy and independence, to cognitive health and dementia, across to technologies for our health systems partners to help provide better healthcare and health service delivery, across to technologies to support healthy lifestyle and wellness. So I want to start off with the first case study here to share a story about how we went from a conversation with one isolated um, older adult to actually changing the health policy in Northern Health and changing health policy beyond to benefit all older adults who are living in care, and indeed all individuals living in care, because there's more than just older adults living in facilities here. So this is the case of hydroponic gardening, and we have the findings that were published in the Journal of Health Promotion and Chronic Disease Prevention in Canada. So if you Google the title, I see beauty, I see art, I see design, I see love, which is a quote from the one of the resident partners on how they perceive the value of this project, you will you'll find it freely available for download. And you'll also find it in French or English. Also, you can see on the right, this word cloud shows how our participants in the study described their experiences in co-designing all of this project. So we started with the conversation with one resident about what was meaningful to her and what was challenging for her living in a long-term care facility. And she really wanted to be connected to land and connected to nature. And that was a huge challenge for her in the facility. And when we discussed this with other staff and residents in the facility, we found out this is a much larger problem that challenges a lot of the residents. So we worked together with residents to create a gardening club. And so we supported the gardening club. They searched online, they had discussions about what did they want to develop, how could they fill the gap, what would they like to do. And we got a very small grant to support that to happen. Here are two of our resident champions and who provided permission to share their photos. They were with us from right from the start in designing all of the work that we've done. We worked with residents and also brought community leaders into the facility to really engage them for their knowledge about how could this work? What are some of the things you need to address? How can we build a program together which will address the residents' needs? And so the residents and community brainstormed all of these things out. And so as part of the project and the evaluation, we used Photo Voice. And so these are pictures that are taken by the residents throughout the project. They chose a combination of raised bed gardening as well as hydroponic gardening, because as we're in the north, weather is quite a challenge. And so they wanted to have that access to nature all year round. And so Photo Voice was a really meaningful way to share their story about what that meant to them. We also developed a recreation program to be inclusive. So this engaged residents who were actively engaged in the gardening, but also our rec and dietary leaders in the facility also participated in developing a recreation program to include more residents. So for example, there was a smoothie day, a juicing program so that all residents could enjoy some of the things that they had made. Additionally, we measured the impact of gardening on resident well-being, and we had different kinds of measures to show the impact that participating in this program had for them. And then there's Photo Voice was really powerful way for residents to share their story. So we had a core group of residents who were leaders in the gardening club, and they took pictures all the way along about how participating in this program, what impact it had for them. And those narratives were the real powerful motivation for policy change. And so here we collaborated at all stages and really worked to share their stories in a variety of ways. And indeed, again, if you download this paper, you'll see their stories and you'll hear their experiences from their words. But in the evaluation, we were able to show the benefits for older adults who participated, for all other residents in the facility who joined the recreation program that was created. We heard observations from staff, the impact on their staff well-being as well. So again, created that evidence in multiple ways, to the point where our health system was then able to use that information to change their policy. And so before this program, residents could not grow their own food and then have it at their dinner table at lunch or dinner. But with this program, they were able to, and you can see in the key points in in the policy documents, the health authority was able to cite that evidence to then inform their policy on on-site gardens and being able to produce food for resident and patient consumption. And this opened the door to more work that I'll show you in a minute. These resident stories and sharing of these stories in the community, we co-presented at lots of different community events where the residents would come and share their stories. And one of the things that got picked up was their reflection on self and their life course development. And our partners at hospice were like, wow, that's really cool. Maybe we could use this technology in our facilities. So it led to expanding different projects. So not only were we able to expand the hydroponic gardening because there was a policy change to different facilities across the north, we were also able to expand it into the hospice. And indeed, I have a master's student who's just finishing up. Again, she used children's drawings as a way to express the impact that this program had. So she worked with hospice grief support staff to co-design a grief support program using hydroponic gardening. And so you can look, the drawings, the children would draw pictures at each session and share what they felt. You know, every week they came in and they'd go right for it first. They go and look at it and go, oh, wow. And so for the hospice, this grief support program became much more than a grief support program. The children were highly motivated to come and participate because it became something to look forward to each week. And so here's examples, some of the photos. The children drew pictures, but they also took photos. And so by the 10th session, they were actually able to take their flowers home. And so we'll be sharing out lots of findings from this research in different ways. But it shows how having that open science approach, publicly sharing at all stages with transparency, what are we learning, what works, what doesn't work, what needs to be changed as we go along, really has led to a huge impact in making gardening accessible and implementation of age tech across the north. And so from that hydroponic tower that we had in the earlier Photo Voice projects, now this facility here has a huge garden green wall. And you can see in the middle, that's a photo of one of our biggest resident champions, John, again, who gave permission to share his photo along with the staff. And in the white is our dietitian lead, Aaron. And this is a picture of their first harvest where he's taking that down to be prepared by the food staff for their lunch. So there's a lot of great pride and meaning that has come from this, benefits from many different perspectives because of taking an open science approach at all stages of this project. So the next example I wanted to show you was about smart home technology. And indeed, you know, the history of smart home technologies, you know, it's a lot longer than many people realize. Like the idea that a home could be smarter and support better comfort and convenience can actually be traced back to at least the 1890s and the early 1900s, when wealthy people used the introduction of electricity to create homes with greater degrees of automation and greater degrees of luxury, relaxation, and indulgence. And you can see here on the left panel, the efforts of smart lighting in homes from Thomas Edison. In the middle, you can see Rural Electricity Administration poster from 1933. And on the right, you can see General Electric and Westinghouse from the 1950s launched the Live Better Electrically campaign, where efforts were awarded to homes as part of their focus on electrifying rural farms. Since the 1990s and 2000s, the smart home idea has arisen again as the cornerstone of making homes both more efficient in terms of energy consumption and carbon emissions, but also more pleasurable, enjoyable, and accessible for individuals to age well. So here's an example of different things that smart homes can collect. We can think about smart homes to collect information about falls, about behaviors, wandering, agitation, about social engagement, supporting lighting, safety, security. So there's lots of different benefits and opportunities for a home to become a smart home. When we think about that, what it means, there's also a broad range of technologies that can be integrated into a smart home. They can include electronic devices, assistive technologies, age check or Geron technologies, as they're called, ambient intelligence, ambient assisted living technologies, information and communication technologies. So when we think about a smart home, we need to think further than just having a smart home, or smartphone, or a smart TV. There's lots of different technologies that can make your home smart. And indeed, we are doing some work now on remote home monitoring. And we have a big technology pilot that we're doing. And, in terms of open science, this again is one of those great examples where we're partnering transparently with a large number of individuals, health systems partners, technology industry partners, to really determine whether these technologies are really supporting individuals to age well, and what's the actual quantifiable, measurable impact that these technologies are having. The example I'm going to focus on briefly today is more about the dementia care home that was created in Vanderhoof, BC. So Vanderhoof is, it's actually the geographic center of British Columbia, even though it's in northern BC. And this on the right you see is a picture of Aurora Home. And now Aurora Home was designed to be a more holistic approach to dementia care. And we worked with integrating age tech right from the beginning. So before that shovel went in the ground, right when we're designing, what the walls will look like, what built environment will look like, really how can technology be embedded to support that person-centered approach to care. And so really not just in the built environment, but also supporting quality of workplace environment for staff, and to maximize the health and well-being for the residents. So to do this, again, taking that collaborative, transparent approach, we were one of many people at the table. So we were part of a technology working group led by Connexus along with Northern Health. And we have these meetings to discuss what are your priorities? What are things that you would like to try? And so making sure that the technologies selected are ones that were not selected by us at CTAN, but were selected by the individuals who were leading these projects. And so, we have evaluation of this embedded at all stages. And so from an open science perspective, having that technology working group and that partnership approach was really important to ensure that the age tech that was implemented actually is specific to the needs and contexts of persons who are living and aging with dementia in Vanderhoof. And indeed, we're partnered on other projects in other parts of northern BC. They're having alternative care facilities built. Those technologies that are being chosen differ. They differ by community. They differ by context. And having that shared decision-making process is really important to make sure that the technologies chosen really match the needs that are identified. And again, having that evidence-based decisions. So it's not just, oh, this is something I saw that was really cool on Amazon. It's like, okay, what's the evidence behind that technology? And if it doesn't exist, how can we build it? And how can we partner together to combine experiential knowledge with research evidence? And so that's where we have lots of ongoing projects to really gain and learn that. So again, as I mentioned, we've embedded evaluation of implemented age tech solutions to better understand the selection and integration process, but also to identify what are some of those challenges. So technologies that we embedded, so we have circadian lighting embedded. And indeed, one of the earlier pictures I showed kind of showed that difference in the lighting in the ceiling. But again, it's a non-invasive technology, doesn't require staff to do anything extra. It just kind of runs in the back. But there's emerging evidence to show that, there's great benefits of circadian lighting to support persons, especially those with dementia, who may have late afternoon agitation. It also supports individuals to sleep better. And indeed, there's anecdotal evidence coming out that it helps staff work better, especially those who may be working a night shift in their own circadian rhythm. We also embedded interactive exercise programs. So here's a a bike. And so here we created some local programming so that the residents, instead of biking here in Italy, they're able to bike down their farmland, or they're able to go for a bike in the woods, making sure again that technology is relevant to the context where people are. So we did an evaluation engaging staff, engaging those age tech company providers, as well as our health systems users. And indeed, we have another evaluation component which engages the older adults. I just don't have the results ready. We're still analyzing our data from that right now. But the evaluation was guided by the theoretical domains framework, and it consists of 14 different domains. It's a great data collection tool and a great way to organize your findings to really identify what are those barriers and facilitators to behavior change. So a few quick slides to kind of give you some of our initial findings from the knowledge domain. Age tech was really found to be quite useful to make a difference in the lives of the older adults, but it required resources and knowledge capacity by staff to be able to support use of the different technologies. And so there was limited evidence in similar settings, but we were able to identify and build some knowledge of some of those challenges that were there. When we think about the social roles and professional identities, here it's, making sure those staff members were adequately trained to use and troubleshoot the technology. And that was really critical for successful implementation. So for example, with the circadian lighting, raising awareness, why do the lights look like that? So creating different videos to communicate that. Here, when we're thinking about staff training and support, it needs to be transparent on what are the benefits and what kind of level of engagement is required. And when we think about the client, is the client or the person that you're engaging, is that the care staff? Is that the management? Is that the community? Or is that the individuals who are living there? So it's really important when we're thinking about that staff's training and support that they're engaged. So for us, I talked about that video. We engage staff in co-creating those videos, identifying, what are the key things that we should be messaging. If we're messaging this to family who are coming, what should be in the video? What should be part of that story? And it's also, I can't talk about research in the North without talking about the importance of the environmental context and ensuring that you have the resources necessary. And so here, it's important to be aware of where are the resource challenges and are you adding more demand? So when we think about our care and our healthcare sector, there's lots of challenges in having sufficient staffing. And that can be a huge barrier to the implementation process. We can think about geography. What works in a large urban center may not be the same to work in a rural community or setting. We need to also consider what are the education and training needs. So how great and knowledgeable are the individuals with using technology or not? And also, again, it's those policy, that legislative and regulatory considerations that we need to be aware of. So overall, I can talk for hours on this, but there was, here's some of those selected factors affecting that uptake. We have different things that will support it and we have different things that will challenge it. And so just making sure that you're aware of what those things are. And when we communicate these factors transparently with our partners, we can think about what kind of mitigation strategies can be put in place to overcome them. And how can we work together to create those resources to fill those gaps. So one of the key things I think that is foundational to an open science approach to research, especially in rural and northern communities where I am, is making sure that you have authentic research partnerships. And so this is a great guide. So for those of you who are newer to research, this is a guide for engaged health researchers who are really interested in, that open science approach, making sure my research is transparent, It's available, it's accessible, and it meets the needs of people that are intended to be the users of it. This is a great resource book. And in this, we've actually published a chapter that looks at what are the steps to foster and not only foster and create partnerships, but how do you maintain them and maintain them between projects and maintain them over time, especially when people are busy. And time is always, we never seem to have enough time. So lots of practical advice and suggestions there in that book. The other thing I wanted to share is about, the importance of evidence, because really that's the foundation for informed decision making. And it definitely is the foundation regarding the adoption and implementation of age tech solutions, any of the examples that I shared with you. Our interest holders rely really heavily on research evidence, but also on expert opinions and practical experience. And it's when we work in partnership and we combine those levels and those types of ways of knowing together, that we really are able to then really make that meaningful impact. So evidence played a crucial role in assessing the efficacy, the feasibility, and the practical implements of age tech solutions. And so when we're thinking about an open science approach to research, it's key to recognize the value of all of these kinds of research, and also at the same time, recognize that their use can vary. So for example, our interest holders relied heavily on the research evidence to inform their decision-making process. However, it was expert opinions and the stories of persons with lived experience that played a really significant role in guiding those decisions. Our interest holders value those practical experiences and that feedback from others who'd implemented similar technologies. So again, that co-sharing of information, sharing and disseminating findings through your network. So our learnings can be of great value to other settings, especially for those in other rural care contexts. It's important that any of the work that you're doing be conducted specific to that local context, and that you've taken the time at the beginning to kind of assess that. Rural care settings are really unique. And so, they have that phrase, if you've met one person with that, you've met one person. And it's very similar in rural communities, especially here in the North. Our rural community partners are all very diverse, and it's important in understanding that as the foundation of those community partnerships. Making sure you engage with leadership and you have those people who will champion those projects alongside you, that you work together to promote that, individual-centered approach that empowers individuals to make their own choices. So with that, when I summarize our what we do here at CTAN, what I try to do in all of the research projects is really taking that partnered approach to ensure that the age tech and all of these different technologies actually they enable, they empower, and they engage people who are aging in the North. So whether it's older adults, their care partners, or the health systems that support them, to support people to age and live well. So with that, I say thank you so much, and I'm really excited to hear any questions or comments or suggestions or ideas that you've had.
Thank you so much, Shannon. That was an exceptionally interesting presentation. You've addressed some very interesting challenges and the benefits of engaged in open science in rural and aging communities. A reminder to everybody to pop your questions into the Q&A section here, and we'll get to Shannon in the next 5 minutes or so with the end of the webinar here. But to get started, I've got one. So you mentioned the importance of authentic research partnerships, the value they bring to open science and to engaged research in general. What is your sense of the communities that you work with, as novel as they are, and the unique people that you're serving and benefiting, of the desire to participate in research? And how do you foster those relationships with the people that stand to benefit the most with your knowledge users?
Yeah, so I get that question a lot, and my first answer is really, the simplest answer I can give you is to be a nice person. And if you are a kind and humble person and you listen before you speak and you listen to what they're sharing, what their experiences are, and you're genuinely curious and learning more, that's the foundation to building these partnerships and being present. So not everything we engage with communities is a research project. I show up for lots of fun talks. I show up to community events. I show up to as much as I can to be present. And so keeping those lines of communication is really important. And simply, it sounds simple, is that kindness will get you further than any other, textbook list of qualities I can give you.
Seems like a great answer for somebody from the north and from kind communities in general.
Kind and
Um,
compassionate communities, right? Caring communities. There's huge movements on it, but it boils down to, I think, being kind, being humble, and listening. A lot of researchers who especially will come in and share, they want to give, they want to tell. But first you have to listen and you have to genuinely hear what they're saying.
and I think we've heard this a number of times too in terms of impact. How do you make impact in a particular knowledge user group? And in many ways, it starts with empathy, right? Like understanding who the people are that you're working with, and their needs and their wants, their fears and desires.
And
We have a
all that
question.
work
Yeah.
with gardening, that's how it began. They had one resident and I said, yeah, I'll come down and get to know her. And I, came, visited and had coffee and tea and cookies and all sorts of snacks to hear her stories over multiple visits. To build that relationship and that rapport to understand. And that need of one person was able to make huge systems level change.
Absolutely. One question I also surfaced for me as well was so obviously benefits to technology in the home to serving older adults. One thing I wonder, how often do concerns come up potentially from older adults as well about one, maybe the privacy or the security of technologies that they might be interacting with, and yeah, how has that come up in your research?
Absolutely. So different people are comfortable with different levels of information. And I think the more open and transparent you are, sometimes people are scared of the unknown. Those privacy concerns, they don't even know what they are or what the level of threat is. So sometimes it's having that conversation, breaking that down, and maybe that technology is not for them. So I gave some examples of the technologies for the remote home monitoring project that we're doing. For example, one of those technologies, actually for people who are very concerned with video, changes the images into stick figures. So there's no transmission of any photos or anything. It's simply stick figures. So again, technology is responding to these differing levels of privacy and security and different levels of comfort that people can have. So again, it's having that conversation about, okay, so what are the concerns? And then is there a different solution that may be right for you? And I would argue that there's no one size fits all age tech solution that's going to work for everyone. And not all age tech solutions work all the time. So especially when we're talking about persons living with dementia, a technology that's appropriate at one stage may change over time and may no longer be the best technology for them. So we think about wandering technologies. We think about what level of cognitive abilities do you need to remember to put on your tracker watch, right? If you forget to put on your tracker watch, it's not gonna help you if you get lost, right? So there's a lot of key pieces that come into choosing the technology that's right for you at the right time in the right place, and that's why context is so important. And so having those conversations and sharing that information and sharing it in a way that people can understand. Because a lot of those technical brochures, they don't make sense for regular people. Even myself, some of them I read, I'm like, I'm not sure what this is saying, or I'm falling asleep halfway through. Maybe we need it in an infographic and we can make something in pictures. Maybe we can make something in a simple to understand video that's in images and videos. So there's all sorts of different ways. Again, gets into how are you communicating that to enable them to use that information.
And I think, yeah, that speaks directly to the point and value of engaged research, bringing your knowledge users in to the beginning of the research process and having them formulate the questions, support the research and the dissemination of that information so that the technology they're using is technology they trust, technology that has direct benefit to the community that you're serving.
That's right. And again, doing it in different ways. So not just having one dissemination method. We think about how can we reach a range of audiences, and that may be in very different ways.
Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end. Shannon, thank you again for an exceptionally interesting presentation and very relevant and a nice way to close up our Open Science series. So I would like to remind everybody, please stay tuned for Health Research BC's digital platforms, including our website and social media and e-newsletter. We're going to do one final wrap up, what we've learned about open science, and we'll do that in the new year. The date is to be determined, and we'll let you know about that as soon as possible. A recording of this particular talk is available on Health Research BC's website. You'll see it in the coming weeks. Again, stay tuned to the website and newsletter. You'll also find 7 years worth of content, KT Connects content focused on knowledge translation skills and best practices. Often in our surveys, we hear about things that people would like to hear or us to conduct a webinar on, for which we may have already done that. So do take a look at our archive. There's tons of really great content there, including the past 6 webinars, all focused on open science. So again, please do watch those and share them using the hashtag KT Connects on social media. And thank you. So I really appreciate your time and your interest in today's webinar. We hope you found it as enlightening as we have. Your feedback is extremely important. It does help us improve future webinars. So a link to a survey will launch immediately after you close out this webinar from Zoom. So please just take 2 minutes to share your thoughts and about this webinar and the Open Science series. Thank you very much in advance. Until next time, take care and happy holidays and a happy new year, everyone. Bye for now.